Well, thank you for joining us. Today I'm Juan Gallardo. This is my colleague Rachel Truss, and so we're going to talk a little bit about our experience with experiential learning in one of our financial planning courses. So hopefully you get some valuable information from it. Just to kind of a brief overview. Finance 4380 is a financial planning capstone class. So by the time students get to that class, they should have already been exposed to a lot of the finance curriculum. So this should be like their last class. So we don't really have to spend a lot of the time teaching all these new concepts. And because we don't have to spend all the time teaching new concepts, then we can get creative in how we deliver that content to our students. And so this is required for our financial planning capstone students, and it's actually only a spring semester class, and it's an online class, and that becomes a bit more challenging to get engagement when we have an online environment.
Absolutely. So looking at experiential learning, and I'll go, that's next. Nope. Online engagements first.
Yeah.
Let Juan kind of talk about his setup for it.
When we first started this class, this is actually the third time we teach this class, third or fourth, one of those. And it's very challenging to get students engaged when it comes to an online environment. It's because all the students will want to do, if you give them a textbook and a quiz, they're going to do it the day of. And that's the only time they're going to open the textbook. That's the only time they're going to read the quiz. And that's the only time they're going to watch your videos, right? And so and I saw that with one of my classes, and so it became a bit more challenging for me to get students engaged into financial planning and actually get them to think more about personal finance with just case studies. And so what we did is we actually changed a little bit of those dynamics, and we moved from the traditional case study approach of a financial planning capstone, and we actually brought in experiential learning.
Yeah, so on experiential learning, he already had implemented this and worked through it last year and the year before. You've done it. This is your third.
Last year was the first.
Last year's the first one. This time, so Juan already had that experience. He just knew that it wanted to be increased. So I didn't bring anything new experiential learning wise to the table. Just kind of had somebody to bounce ideas off of. But taking that traditional online format to an applied experience, it gives this another a real world component to it that most online students may not get, depending on your course setup. They work with a real client, so I got to be the client this time, and we'll talk about the start of that in just a second. But we've got an emphasis on decision making, communication, professional responsibility, all things leading back to our AACSB standards with the College of Business, things that we're trying to get these students have these real world experiences before they graduate. We've got the real financial planning process. So when Juan talks about this being a very real process, these were my real numbers, my real information, everything from my salary to retirement planning to any kind of investments, anything that we've done beyond just the typical day-to-day insurance information. I mean, there's all sorts of details. Yeah, what were the goals? What are life goals for my daughters? What were life goals for my husband and I? What would retirement, things that they would actually do as financial planners. So it was detailed on my end, but the students actually got to see this integrative client relationship process that Juan was building for them.
So what we do first is in the fall semester, we go to client selection. And so Rachel wanted to be our client. Actually, no, I bribed her to be our client. And so what we do in the fall is we actually recruit the client. And so I sent Rachel a questionnaire, and this questionnaire is very in-depth. It leaves stuff out purposely, and it's way out of order purposefully. And so it asked Rachel everything from estate planning to insurance planning, retirement, investment ideas, goals. And then we look at her cash flow statement and we see where all of her money's going. Everything about her personal finances, we're able to look at that. And so students are then given that data. And they have to analyze it. And the reason why we leave stuff out is because we'll talk later in the next, is that there are client meetings where the students actually get to meet her and ask her a lot of these questions. And the reason why things are out of order is because when students are working with clients, sometimes they're going to get information and then 2 days later, they're going to get a call. Hey, by the way, I forgot this. Or, hey, by the way, I forgot this. So the idea is to give them those documents is to try to make them as real as possible as it would see. And so it gets a little bit repetitive on her end because she's answering questions sometimes twice on that. but sometimes the students don't necessarily catch that until the end.
Yeah, and there's sometimes even with mine, even knowing that we were going to go through this, there were times that he messaged back and a student asked a question or Juan needed more information on, hey, you submitted your W-2, but now things have changed. You've taken on a faculty role. Has your salary changed? And so they actually got to see life changes with me as we're actually working through this client process. I filled out all my paperwork in the fall with him under my instructional consultant role, and then was moved over to faculty position. And so I had to change all of that information that was given to them in this process. So they actually got to see a little bit of live stuff.
We didn't do new documents. We just had a client meeting and said, by the way, this is my new salary. So all of your calculations have to have that new salary. So students actually have to watch that to figure that out, right? Or they have to attend the client meeting.
Yeah, if they show up.
Yeah, if they show up.
So my experience itself, so students develop this comprehensive financial plan. I won't see that with this group until a few weeks from now.
Yeah. It's due next week.
But they're building it now. Me being a real person, now I kind of see, and we haven't talked about this much, I can see this building into a custom GPT. So if Juan couldn't vet a real client, he could build out a custom GPT where we might reach some of these students that are not attending these calls, that are not or don't have the time, don't have the ability to jump on a 1 p.m. Friday afternoon call. We could build a custom GPT where maybe could run through some of this financial planning stuff as well. Not taking over teaching for your financial planning course, but it's something that just after seeing
job security.
Job security. Sorry, I have the credentials to teach financial planning, so I will not be doing that. But seeing the custom GPT, a lot of people talking about it in the poster presentations this week. I know Bryn and Jim, you guys were there, CE people. You guys have seen a lot of this going on, so I kind of can see that could lean that way too. But we're getting increases in accountability, increases in engagement, and then we've got quality of work too. So I'll let Juan kind of talk about design for that.
Yeah, so I think it's in the next slide. So we have now when students are creating at the beginning of the semester, the first thing they get is her documents. And so they have 2 weeks to look at those. And so throughout the week, I'll do a lecture or we do a lesson on financial planning, the importance of financial planning. Then we do another lesson on just being fiduciaries and working for the best of your clients. So just very introductory and stuff. But while we're doing that, their homework assignments are to analyze and thoroughly analyze the client documents. After they do that, week 3, then we go into cash flow and budgeting. So based on the client documents, the students need to submit a cash flow statement. Where is the client at right now? What is she doing with all of her money? How much does she have left over? Where is it going? And so it gives them a snapshot of where the client is, and then now they have to go back to their goals and make recommendations. So they'll submit that. I'll give them feedback on it. And then the next week we do investment planning. Very similar approach. They'll take whatever the client wants in terms of her risk profile, and they'll create an investment portfolio for her. Okay, how much should she spend? And based on discretionary income, and then I'll give them feedback. We do retirement analyses. How much is the client going to need at retirement? We do insurance analysis. How much are they going to need in insurance planning? We do everything from estate planning. Are there estate planning documents? So all those analyses that you would see, that students would see in a holistic financial plan, they have to develop. But they develop it 1 week at a time, and they'll turn it in on Tuesday. By Thursday, they already have all of their feedback. So I give them feedback and say, okay, you overestimated. You need to go back and look at your numbers. You need to do this. You need to do that. So they get feedback every week. And so we have about 9 weeks where we really go into the content itself. And so each week tends to build up to the plan.
So Juan even gave them some feedback at the time and said, or feedback to me and said, hey, these questions are probably going to come up. These students, like, here's some things that are missing. You've got extra funds. We don't know exactly where they're going. Maybe this is budget related. And so I kind of had a heads up before we had our second client meeting with the student, and they had, he just gave me a heads up so I know, kind of help them, along with their answers and their questions and their answers as we went. So that was good too, to kind of get an update between the 2 client meetings.
And here are our client meetings. So the students will have 2 client meetings. They'll analyze the documents, they'll have access to them, they'll start looking at them. And before the first assignment is due, they actually have a client meeting. And they have, there's an assignment tied to that where the students have to actually ask 4 questions to the client that are not directly tied to the documents themselves. For example, what are your goals? Well, that says it on the document, right? So then they get more creative and ask questions like, hey, what's your money story? How did you grow up thinking about money? Do you share accounts with your husband? So things like that. Now they were asking those types of questions. And so by the time the first client meeting came along, I put all the questions into a document, sent them over to her, and we answered them in the client meeting. And so, but it ends up becoming more conversational because I'll ask some of the question, but then the students will interject and say, okay, well, but what about this? But what about that? And at that time, they've only looked at the client documents for about 2 weeks. They haven't really done full analyses yet. So they have very easy questions, very vague questions, are not as in depth yet. Second client meeting, though, that's when they start really asking things like, okay, she doesn't have insurance. Why don't you have insurance? Or why don't you have an LLC? Or so then, as we're working through the feedback and everything that they've gotten through it, this one occurs at the end of the semester. So this one happened the second week of school. This one happened last week, 2 weeks ago. So they got all this feedback already, and now they're coming with questions to the client. And so now it becomes a bit more engaging and a bit more conversational.
Yeah, and they get feedback from Juan as they're going through it, and he says, okay, well, this is our first meeting, here's our takeaways, but also you guys should kind of think about this. And then as they're getting these assignments as they go, they're thinking about the next meeting and what they should do. Now, one thing I'll praise Juan on is if the students are not super engaged in the video calls, they would submit questions ahead of time. Okay, he's emailing them, we're checking in on Canvas, all sorts of information, and so he's getting that clear, concise communication back and forth with them to kind of get questions lined out before that second meeting went on. Anything else on this one?
No, that's good. So on top of that meeting, so after the second client meeting, then we bring a CFP professional. So the CFP professional actually gets access to her documents as well. And we have a conversation. I think him and I met for about an hour before the meeting, but then it's a live meeting with the students. This one happened around 5:30 last week, 5:30 p.m. I had about 7 students show up to that one. And so now the students, all the questions that they have with the client that she was able to answer, now they can actually ask similar questions to a CFP professional. What would you do in this case? And so our CFP professional actually had her client documents, and he just looked at them and said, have you guys noticed there's no umbrella insurance? And they're like, holy smokes, there's not. And then they went into this giant thing on why that's important. And then they asked him other questions like, okay, so she's good, right? Because they were iffy about cash flow and retirement. So she's good, right? And he was like, yeah, retirement, she's fine, but we got to focus on this because you're going to have clients that are going to be okay in retirement, but they're not okay in insurance and they're not okay in estate. And so a lot of her recommendations are going to come in estate planning, right? And so now they're a bit more confident when they write their plan. Because even though I give them feedback, I don't know why they don't listen to me as much. I think I'm cool. And so I'm a YH, right? But you start thinking of those things, and so now when they're drafting their document, they actually have true questions and they're a bit more confident. And then if you go to the next slide, after they meet with the CFP, they actually have to schedule a one-on-one meeting with me. And so once they met with Rachel twice, they meet with the CFP. Now they're putting it all together, and they have to schedule a one-on-one with me. And the first question I ask them is, okay, how's your plan going? Walk me through it. And then they'll walk me through their plan. Okay, what about this? What about that? And so then we start filling in the gaps. And so, yeah, that's essentially a bit of the process that we do there. So in the end, students submit a comprehensive financial plan. Ends up being about 60 pages. A good one is about 70 to 80 pages, so 60 pages. But on there, they have a ton of introductory documents. They'll have pictures to help with the client. And we really walk through them about, hey, a lot of this is going to be education. So you have to tell the client why you're making this recommendation and tie it back to the client's goals. Like one of your goals was for your daughter's education. So, okay, I have this much money left. I'm going to put it in a 529 plan because this is your goal and this is how we're going to do it. And we did an analysis for education and found out that you need to save $5,000 a year for the next 15 years to be okay. And so that's the type of analysis that our students are making to be able to do that. And so 5,000, she's good, by the way, she's a baller. And so, but those are the type of decisions that the analyses that our students are making, and then they make recommendations based on that. So after they submit the plan, they have to create a 20-minute presentation where they explain the plan to the client. It's as if they were talking to the client directly. And I tell them, hey, she's going to be with me when I'm grading these. Or okay. And so it's one of those things where now they're having an opportunity to speak to the client.
So we ended up in this like mutually beneficial relationship. So I think a lot of times we're like, oh, I'm scared to ask somebody to help me with a project like this. Does somebody have time? I will say that 2 meetings and filling out, now that took a little bit of time to fill out the initial paperwork for him as the client. But 2 meetings is an hour here and there. It's no big deal over the course of the semester. And I get that mutual information, right? I get that information back from the students that will give me some things to look for.
She'll get the best financial plan for the best that the students produce. She'll get the copy.
Yeah.
And it's not financial advice; it's a class project. So.
This is not medical advice.
Yeah, this is not financial advice. But this was the best project. And I always say, hey, maybe you should not pay so much attention to this detail, but it's not financial advice.
Absolutely. I think that's all you have on it. Oh, here we go.
No, that's yours. Your client experience.
Yeah. So just kind of hit on that. Client experience, not a lot of time. If you are thinking about executing something like this in your class, find somebody that is easy and collaborative, somebody to work with. Michelle is doing interviews with management. Tell me which class it is. It's not Capstone, but
Capstone.
It's the Capstone course. So her Capstone course for management, they're going out and finding managers to interview. So somebody out in the community may be a little bit more difficult to access, but he's got his, you had your financial planner. So it just kind of depends on the experiential learning take. But myself as a client, we already hit on this.
And this is my shameless plug. If you want to be a client for next spring, by the way, we're looking for one. And so I think so when I first did this class, it was a lot of case study. It was case studies approach, and I didn't really get. I got some good feedback from students, but not so much engagement from it. Last spring, this is actually my highest rated class in terms of rating. I think I got like a 4.8 overall out of 5 of the students who actually answered it because they were more engaged. They really liked the fact that they got to work with the real client. I think the fact that they met the client and they actually had an opportunity to talk with the client really added a personal component to it. And you can tell that when they're writing their client document. Hey, we know we have to take care of your daughters. We know we have to take care of this. We know we have to take care of that. So it was really a neat experience for them to give them that opportunity to build that financial plan for a real client.
All the meetings were recorded, so they could go back and listen to how I answered different things. It's all a part of that client experience. Can they go back and review how detailed was I on answering things? How specific do I want to get in retirement goals? What am I looking at for my daughters? Like we talked about education planning. They actually could go back and review it as they needed to. Yeah.
This is you.
Can we go back? Final takeaway.
Yeah.
No, yeah, okay.
This is you.
So experiential learning transforms online education. We know this. This is part of our strategic plan as a university. We're looking for high impact practices. Anytime that we can integrate some kind of experiential learning into, especially our online classes, we can find something there to make that experience just that much better. The more impact, the more success our students will see, the more impact we'll see coming out on career preparedness. Can't even get that out. Real clients create meaningful accountability. Again, going back to the realness. Can they really sit down with somebody's genuine numbers? Like with financial planning, I'm giving them real numbers. We're seeing real-time information coming back and forth between the two of us. And then students move. That COBS, experiential learning cycle, going back to theory here. We're moving from knowing concepts, that theory, and then we're applying them. So we've been talking about it all day long. Earlier with Mrs. Weiss out of education, she talked about that as well, taking theory and moving that into practice, and then that practice becoming knowledge and learning. So
yeah,
and we're applying them professionally.
And that's the ultimate goal is that they create something that they're going to encounter to in the near future. And one of the feedback that I got from our students once, like, hey, why can't we use a financial planning software? Because we use it in one of my previous classes prior to this one. And the answer is no, we're not going to use it. And because they need to know where the numbers come from. And once they know where they come from, then they can actually apply them correctly. And so the students get an opportunity to not just know the concept, but just apply them. And I think that's just the biggest win for them in the long run.
So I also asked Juan in the time of building this presentation and stuff, I'm like, how did this come up? So will you kind of tell them what you told me about how you kind of got to this idea for the capstone?
Yeah, and so again, when we're doing capstone, one of our students actually approached me about that and saying, this is cool, but could we ever work with somebody for real, for real? That's what the word for real, for real. And I was like, you know what? That's not a bad idea. And so we started incorporating that with last semester where we actually brought in a real client that the students actually had to meet. And so this is something that the students actually wanted when they gave me that feedback. And so now they've taken it and they really liked it. So every semester we tend to add more to it. So this year we added the financial planner. Next year we're probably going to add more visits with the financial planner because they really enjoyed that component of it. We're going to do one in the beginning, one at the end, like what we did with the client. And so the students really want that engagement. So it's just how we have to present it to them in a way that is going to be relevant to them. And so sometimes we want to do it at 8 a.m. in the morning because that's when we're most active, but they're just coming back from out there.
This week,
Yeah, this week.
All right. Yeah, good? Is that
it?
it?
I think that's it.
Awesome. Okay. Question, comment?
Do you have any integration or allow them to use AI in this assignment, like this project at all?
So yes, and I tell them AI is a great planning tool, and I actually show them in one of my videos, like, hey, this is what you want to do. But I tell them AI is only as good as the user because if you're not asking the right questions, you're never going to get the right answers. And so I tell them AI is fine, but one thing that they can't do is they can't upload client documents into AI because that's not seen wise way to see it people, or they can't do that, but they can ask it and brainstorm some of those problems. And that's okay. Something I was telling them, something that you can ask AI is, okay, what is the purpose of a will? And what if I don't have one? Okay, now they can start planning those things, right? But as opposed to, hey, Rachel doesn't have a will, this is her stuff. That's when I tell them, that's where we have to kind of stop on that.
Yeah. Okay.
But yeah, I like AI. I think AI is cool.
I was just wondering if you allowed it or encouraged it or was like, it's okay to use it for these things or this thing, but yeah, I would never really want my personal like Excel sheet uploaded to.
Yeah, and so they know, and so I make him sign non-disclosure agreements in the beginning. I make him confidentiality letters for the client. So I tell him, do not upload things into AI and do not do all that. And so because AI is here to stay, it's not going to go anywhere. So might as well embrace it at some point.
And Juan went through and marked out my, any kind of personally identifiable information that they could easily, take and do anything else with. So they don't have my address, no cell phone numbers, none of that kind of stuff. All that, so it,
I sell that if they want extra credit.
You're
not sure.
Faculty,
Yeah.
Money on the black.
Right, we need side money.
It was great. I had a great experience. I encourage you guys to do the same in your courses if you can. If you've got something that you can go that direction with, it's awesome. Have one student do your financial planning for you.
Yeah, we'll do they'll do your financial planning.
They'll do.